Hey, fellow patriots, Rick Green here with today's Constitutional Minute on the 25th Amendment and impeachment. Obviously, a lot of talk about that right now across the country as the Democrat leadership tries to unite the country by dismissing half the country. Anyway, here's how the Constitution actually works on this issue. First of all, 25th Amendment, that's what Nancy Pelosi is calling for. In order to invoke the 25th, there are two ways to do that. The first way is Section 3 in the 25th Amendment, which is where the president himself or herself says, I'm invoking the 25th because I'm going under for surgery or whatever it might be. That has happened 3 times in American history. President Reagan and then George W. Bush did it twice, all 3 times for surgeries. They were out for a couple of hours. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about Section 4 in the 25th Amendment, which is where the Vice President of the United States and half the cabinet decide that the president is incapacitated, incapable of doing the job. This was foreseen and passed because of what had happened to Eisenhower, for instance, who had a heart attack and other illnesses. You had, Garfield had been shot and didn't die for 80 days. So there was a question of, okay, who's president, who's acting president? So these things had happened in history, and actually on the heels of Eisenhower was when the 25th was finally passed, and that happened in 65, 66. Okay, so here's how it's supposed to work. If the president is actually incapacitated, either an accident and in the hospital and nobody knows when he's going to come out, has been kidnapped, has gone, mentally crazy. Perhaps we're going to see this happen with a Biden administration as he's clearly losing his faculties. I would expect the 25th to be invoked appropriately at some point in the next 4 years. But to do this right now with President Trump, who is clearly not incapacitated and clearly has his mental faculties, but they're just creating this scenario to try to say that he is not, frankly, mentally well, because of the things he said, like, hey, let's be peaceful and let's be patriotic and let's cheer on our congressman. I mean, it absolutely is abusing the intent of the 25th Amendment, and that's why it won't happen. I mean, look, they have to have Vice President Pence to do this. He has to instigate this with the cabinet, and even if in some crazy world that happened, he would need half the cabinet, and the members of the cabinet that would have been likely to side with this have already resigned, so they're not even on the cabinet anymore. And even if he got half the cabinet, well, the president can immediately dispute that. And in fact, if you go to the 25th Amendment in Section 4, if the vice president does this, then the president can immediately dispute that. And then it goes to the House and the Senate, and they have to vote 2/3 to uphold the 25th Amendment in this case. So we're talking both House and the Senate have to vote 2/3. So this is a much higher bar than impeachment. We're talking 2/3 of the House and the Senate, and then half of the president's own cabinet and his own vice president. Not going to happen. Now, what's next? Well, Speaker Pelosi has said that if Mike Pence does not invoke the 25th, then that she will move for articles of impeachment. They've already filed the articles of impeachment. They're headed that direction. So let's quickly run through how impeachment works as well. Impeachment comes from Article 2, Section 4, which says the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, they're claiming that he incited a riot. Anybody that watches his speech knows that didn't happen. Anybody that watches the whole afternoon knows that he did not incite the riot and cannot be held responsible for the actions of a few out of those hundreds of thousands of patriotic, freedom-loving, and peaceful Americans. If that's the standard, then we clearly do need impeachment hearings for Kamala Harris, since she encouraged rioters this summer to continue and to not let up. We need impeachment hearings for several of the members of Congress who encouraged the riots this summer and encouraged, even Cory Booker, Senator Booker, encouraged these people to get in the face of members of Congress. So if this is going to be the standard, then it has already they've already missed their chance to use impeachment for folks that clearly need it. Now, technically, impeachment for members of Congress doesn't apply. That's a separate process that the House and the Senate undergoes. This Article 2, Section 4 clause for impeachment of the president doesn't apply to members of Congress. But it could very well apply to Kamala Harris after she is sworn in as Vice President of the United States. So let's look at how the impeachment would work. Since they're clearly going to go forward with it, this is their idea of how to unite the country. If they impeach the president again, and they only need, a majority in the House to actually impeach. But remember, impeach is like in being indicted by a grand jury. It's not a conviction. It's not a finding of guilt or innocence. It's simply saying there's enough here that we think we should have a trial. And so if they do, in fact, impeach the president on this, then the Senate is the one that tries that impeachment. And that is found in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. It says Clause 6, it says the Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. So here we go again. If we do this again, it's going to be a trial in the Senate, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court will come over and oversee that trial. And to convict, they need 67 senators to convict. Now, there's clearly some Republicans that, if you watch what's happened the last few weeks, I think will support this. Can they get 17 Republicans to support it? I don't know. I doubt it, but that's where they're headed. Now, timing is almost impossible here. The resolutions and the process that the Senate has already adopted for the next week or so only allow them to do business on the 19th of January and very little business then. Mitch McConnell has said that they couldn't actually take up this until 1 o'clock on the 20th, which is an hour after the president's no longer in office. Impeachment does not apply to someone that is no longer an officer. So if he's not president or vice president or another officer, he can't be impeached. So that process would not go forward. Let me address one other thing with regard to impeachment. When someone is convicted of impeachment, then the punishments are found in the next paragraph. In Article 1, Section 3, it says, judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office, comma, and disqualifications to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. Basically means if they were to convict the president of impeachment here, then their only options for punishment are removal from office, which is what they're really after, and then preventing him from being able to serve again. That's what Nancy Pelosi is after. And those are two steps. And sometimes we've seen federal judges be impeached and removed from office, but not prevented from serving in other offices. Judge Alcee Hastings was convicted on impeachment, and then they did not take the second step of preventing him from running for office. So he ended up running for Congress and serving in Congress. So pretty crazy there. But listen, bottom line is 25th Amendment is not likely. I mean, that's a 0.0000% chance of actually happening. Impeachment is very, I think, possible because they only need a majority vote in the House. Conviction is not likely based on the timing here. Would set a horrible, horrible precedent for what is an impeachable offense and removing a president from office the day before his term ends. So terrible precedent here, not likely to happen, but I thought it was important for us to understand how the 25th Amendment works and how impeachment works under the Constitution. I'm Rick Green. This has been today's Constitutional Minute.